I'm joined today by Anthony Ingraffea, the Dwight C. Baum Professor of Engineering Emeritus at Cornell University. He has worked as a structural engineer, a county engineer. He has taught structural mechanics and fracture mechanics. You've been at the center of what has become a sort of controversial study about fracking, about methane gas, and I want to get into the details of that. But let's start, before getting into that, talk to us generally a little bit about what the risks are environmentally in terms of health, etc., with fracking, or as it's known to some, hydraulic fracturing. What do we need to be aware of?
The most important aspects of impact to human health and the environment from what people call fracking, which is really extraction of oil and gas from shale formations. That's really the news of the last decade. Fracking has been around a long time, but fracking in shale is what's new. And because fracking in shale is inherently inefficient, that is, they don't get very much oil and gas out of a shale gas well compared to traditional wells, they have to drill many, many wells in a given area. Thousands of wells in the county, tens of thousands of wells in the state, hundreds of thousands of new wells across the country. Every time you drill additional wells, you run the risks of there being spills, contamination incidents, blowouts, increased truck traffic, increased waste disposal issues like we're seeing now in Oklahoma and Texas, Arkansas, Ohio. And most importantly for everybody on the planet, you drastically increase emissions of methane and carbon dioxide, both of which are the things that are driving climate change.
When we hear pro-fracking people, and I hesitate to call them experts or analysts because I often don't see any expertise or analysis coming from some of their statements, we are led to believe that when there are problems with individual fracking sites, that it is not anything inherent to the activity of fracking, but rather we hear, oh, there was something specifically done wrong with a particular well and it leaked, for example. And the pro-fracking community sort of wants to explain to us that, broadly speaking, fracking is very, very safe, but we can find individual instances where someone did something wrong, for example. What's your reaction to that line of thinking, that fracking generally is actually safe, but it's individual errors with a particular fracking site that pose the risk? Does that make any sense to you?
No, it doesn't. It's a statistical gobbledygook. As I said, because you have to drill many, many wells to get economically viable amounts of oil or gas out of a shale formation, you statistically increase the probability of all these individual incidents occurring. Of course, every accident is an individual incident. The question is, what is the frequency with which those incidents occur? And if the industry is always operating more or less at the same level of safety or non-safety, but you multiply that level by a larger number of wells in a given area, obviously the number of individual incidents is going to increase. That's the problem with shale. Everything is bigger, longer, takes more time. And because everything is bigger, longer, and takes more time, the probability of something going wrong goes up. That's the problem.
And this sort of gets me into the next area I want to discuss with you, which comes from the study you were involved in that I mentioned. We would like to think that, okay, we do more wells, more sites, etc. But each one, as technology improves, proves to be less and less of a risk. But your study found that the exact opposite is true. In other words, you found that the newer oil and gas wells that use the more modern hydraulic fracturing technology actually are more likely to be leaking methane. Why is that, in your opinion?
We found that to be true in the state of Pennsylvania. And let me just point out that modern technology is modern technology. The technology of drilling a well, casing a well, cementing a well, and fracking a well is not new technology. The industry has been doing those actions more or less the same way for decades. So any notion that there is constantly improving technology which increases or decreases the likelihood of something going wrong is just false. What is more important in the rate at which there is a well failure, a loss of integrity, a leaking incident, is the actual actions taken by operators supposedly to try to follow regulations. When they make shortcuts, either because the price of gas is very high and the price of oil is very high, so they want to drill as many wells and get them online as fast as possible, meaning you're taking shortcuts, you're using less experienced crews, the equipment might not be in great repair, or at the other end of the spectrum, which we have now, which is the industry isn't the price of gas and oil is so low that nobody can make any money at it. Again, you're going to cut corners. Safety procedures, environmental procedures are going to be not followed as strictly as normally. And so in those two extremes, you're making a lot of money, you're not making very much money. You see an incidence of increased rate of loss of well integrity. That's well known. It's documented in the industry literature itself. It's human nature. The idea is that you want to get as much money out of that hole you're drilling in the ground as you can relative to the amount of money you put down that hole to drill and frack the well.
The study that you were involved with has so shaken up the pro-fracking community that there have actually been articles, which I'm sure you've seen, I was looking through them this morning, that are out there specifically to attempt to debunk the study you were involved in. And one of the criticisms I would love to hear you address is the critics of the study you talk about, as you mentioned, was focused in Pennsylvania. The pro-fracking community claims, well, Anthony Ingraffea is giving us data only from Pennsylvania. And how does he justify that the Pennsylvania data is representative of fracking more broadly? So I'll pose the question to you. Your study did focus on Pennsylvania. Is there any reason to think that the results would be different in non-Pennsylvania locations?
No, not significantly different. We chose Pennsylvania because it is the state where the largest volume of newfound shale gas is being produced from the Marcellus Formation. It's the state which has twice updated its originally tough regulations monitoring oil and gas operations in the state. So we went to a place where the industry prides itself in saying, here's where we're doing the most work under the toughest regulations. And what we found is business as usual. The rate at which new shale gas wells are found to be defective is about the same historically as it's always been in the relatively modern era of oil and gas operations. There's no reason at all to suspect that we have the same operators, more or less, many of the same operators operating in Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Ohio, West Virginia, wherever there's shale gas and shale oil operations, using exactly the same procedures, the same protocols, sometimes under weaker regulations. Why would we suspect that there'd be any different action? The only possible difference would be geological. But again, the industry has been drilling through the same geological strata for many, many decades, over 100 years. They know what's down there, more or less, and they know what they're supposed to be doing to build and maintain a well that does not leak. So no, I dismiss a criticism like that as uninformed and nonsense.
The last topic I want to turn to in the time we have left is that of the connection between fracking and earthquakes. And I've been looking at data for several months coming out of Oklahoma, which certainly seems to show at minimum a correlation between an increased frequency of earthquakes in Oklahoma that seems to be happening near and in terms of the timeline, near fracking locations. What research have you done into this possible connection, and are you ready to say anything about whether there's a causal relationship there?
Well, it's not important what I say. What's important is what the state of Oklahoma now admits. Oklahoma originally resisted. When I say Oklahoma, the governor, various officials in the state originally, a few years ago, resisted even the correlation between increased human-induced seismicity and waste injection from fracking operations. I want to make that clear. It's not fracking per se. It's the injection of fluid waste from fracking into so-called disposal wells that is now acknowledged by every official of any importance, including a governor of the state of Oklahoma, that there is not only a correlation, there's causality. So much so that the state of Oklahoma has issued directives to a number of operators to cease and desist from operations of a number of injection wells and to do better monitoring and recording of the pressure used and the volume injected in many other wells. So Oklahoma has come a long way to try to understand what is increasingly happening. The fear in Oklahoma is that the upper end, that is the largest magnitude of induced seismicity in Oklahoma so far has been about a 5.7. There have been many in the high 4s, low 5s of additional induced seismic events. The fear is that at some point there will be triggering of an even larger event. 5.7 is bad enough. That's going to cause some significant surface damage to structures and possibly injury to humans. It's certainly causing loss of property values, the need for property owners to start getting earthquake insurance in Oklahoma, and the health effects of causing tremendous stress in thousands of Oklahoma residents. In contrast to that, Texas is still in a state of denial.
Incredible, yeah. And as we often see, for-profit capitalism for where the money is being made, but then socializing the costs through insurance, through health effects, et cetera, as you're pointing out.
Exactly.
A grim picture for sure. We've been speaking with Anthony Ingraffea. He is the Dwight C. Baum Professor of Engineering Emeritus at Cornell University. Thank you so much for being on with me today.
Thank you, David.